What is up, guys? So first video of the channel, we're going to be doing a Link install video on our S13. We can go a quick overview of the car and start from there. So here's the car, S13 coupe, full suspension, new Origin drift flying kit. Pretty decent quadrant caliper, but we gotta switch our hydro setup. And in the bay, we have a semi-built S13 SR, built bottom end, 3071 turbo, leaky oil like a lot of SRs, bigger injectors, and previously had a ECU, Masters ECU, but I got rid of that and got the Link ECU for it now. Here's the Link. This is what you get. You got a box, and then this fits in the stock ECU case. So we have to switch out the boards, take this one apart, and put this one in the case. Alright, so in the box you get your instruction manual and your Link board. Go ahead and open this up. I already covered this earlier. So for the few different versions that you can get depending on the board number you get and the plug and play, but there's also jumper lists that you have to note here, and that will correspond to all these small jumpers here for whatever harness and engine you're using. And this basically reiterates that in the manual here. And the other jumper is just for your airflow meter to temp pull up if you wanted to reuse your wiring for that for an IAT, but I already have that pre-wired. So on the pinout portion, you can reuse a lot of the stock IO from the factory harness to get other signals. So mine would be 91 to 93, and so we have our IAT coming in off AN temp 2, and that shows off pin 15 off the spare input. And then we also are running our wideband into AN volt 1 off pin 19 because we're no longer using a factory narrowband sensor. So then we can show you that in the car once we get the ECU switched into the board. Okay, so we got most all the bolts out. The top ones for this daughter board, they usually get pretty seized up, and then the side ones as well. I just drilled them out. Don't plan on reusing this ECU or selling it, as stock ECUs are junk, and also the flash chip ones are junk. They're all usually outdated. So then the next thing you want to do is line up your ECU in the case and just kind of make a note of where you want the cable and the map sensor to come out. So you can either drill the case there, or you can kind of notch the sides of these holes and then jog it over. And we'll probably just notch these and then run them through those existing holes. So here's it going to be bolted down in the case. So you have a notch to kind of put the USB cable through and the map line. You can also fit a map line probably through this hole, but then it's bolted down. But also on the Links, they have the header bolted to these aftermarket screws and nuts. You have to take off it on both ends, and you can reuse the hardware to bolt it on this one and this one, instead of using the old gold bolts. They typically are stripped coming out because of the Loctite. But then you just put those in, and then we can get the case start to be reassembled and then installed into the car. Alright, so back to the ECU side. So as I was showing you guys earlier, the extra inputs will be wired directly to the ECU just to save on having to buy an IO expansion harness. So these two twisted wires here, we have our IAT, and that one goes in that pin, and then the other one you just splice into sensor ground. All sensors need that for battery offset, so you have an accurate reading. Our other one here is for our wideband input. It's just an analog input and not the CAN. And I just had to also do some slight repairs, as the previous owner had cut out the ECCS relay trigger and the fuel pump relay trigger. So I just tied those back into the connector, and hoping the pins are good. Don't know why he bypassed those, but he did. So just putting that back to factory. Another thing to not forget when you guys are putting on your map sensor line is to zip tie the line to the sensor, because you do not want that coming off on you while you're driving, or your car will not run well, as it'll be defaulted to atmospheric pressure, which is going to be way too rich for cruising and idling. And then when you're in boost, if you are still getting in boost, then it's going to run lean, so it won't know what your pressure is at. Alright, so now we have the ECU back in place, just kind of loosely put in there just in case you have to re-access it. Make sure to put your USB cable on so that you can get to it easily when you get back to it, and plug in the ECU. So now we should be good to start powering it on and getting it all unlocked. Alright, so we're having connectivity issues with the software, but sort of got it figured out so far. So when you first install this, you're going to want to get your ECU unlock code. So we'll go ahead and put that in. It's quite long. Typically copy paste it from an email, but I got this second hand off of someone, but it's new, so they had to text me the code, and you'll get that typed in and hit unlock, and is accepted. So now it's just showing about the different firmware. So you typically want to update your firmware before you do anything, and just make sure you look at the change notes before you do it. And you can click upgrade, and then you wait. Alright, so now we got our firmware updated. You're going to want to open the closest base map to your plug and play or your vehicle. That way it kind of gives you closer for your IO assignments and most of your base calibrations that are to the car. So like sensors and all that. So all of our sensors need to be done. So you'd come in, go to your analog outputs. So for IAT, we don't have a Bosch, we have a GM IAT, which would be our Delphi AC IAT. So you see it kind of matches our ambient temp right now of 38. And I believe our coolant temp is not working properly at the moment, which is a problem on the last ECU, which we're going to have to change that. But at the moment it's reading a -40 value, so unless something else would be off about it, but it's not something with the pull up. So we're just going to have this defaulted to 160 so that we don't have any issues at the moment. And so I'll go ahead and get everything else set up, and then we will take it from there. Alright, so I figured out some issues with the S13. Previous owner had repinned the connector for the old ECU to a different pinout for the ignition and few outputs. So got that all fixed and connection is good. So connected, but now we have starter issues. So got a new starter from Omar and about to put that on. We got the wrong size. That's what we got.
Nice. This is good stuff.
10 out of 10, Ken.
Check these shoes out. You ain't never seen one of them. Mr.
So we got the 14 for the starter. That one fits. But the one for the bolt, we got too big.
Your dumb light's in the way. There we go. Now I can see.
So we got this starter that went out here. And now we gotta switch it.
Talking about the starter. Yep, that's a bolt. He's undoing it. Look at him. I can maybe get it from this side.
The bolt?
Yeah, maybe. It's okay, you just don't want my help. Action shot. Action shot. Oh, how do I... This is what movies are made of.
We got our nice CD009 taking up most of the transmission tunnel here. And a nice speck of oil on the bottom of the car, keeping it nice and rust free. You know you don't gotta roll it 24/7, right?
I'm rolling it. I'm getting a good outside view of the car. This is it. This is the whip. Check those wheels out. Go, go. Don't open this door. It won't close back up. No matter what Mike says. He's lying. All right. All right, ladies and gentle ladies. Here is the bad starter. See, it's all crummy and bad. And now we already put it in. I should have videoed that, but we got the new one in, and you can't see anything because it's dark. Unreal. But there it is.
Starter bolted on.
It's bolted on. The cables are there.
Need to bolt on the cable.
Looks good.
Get a little bit of light.
Where the hell did it get flipped? What the hell? Alright. And we always make sure we undo the battery. This is us redoing the battery. So you don't burn your car down. You can't have working hood trunk struts. You
Nope.
gotta hold it up and struggle.
Pretty much.
This is good wiring right there.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. That's how you should do it.
That's why there's a new fuel pump relay in the car.
Nice.
Alright, so it turns out it wasn't really a starter issue. There was a fuse in the engine bay that was hidden. Still showed continuity and voltage, everything, but it was half blown, so we didn't get starter. So now we can start the car up after we got everything set up. Fires up. We're having a wideband error right now. We're not gonna really know if it's working for sure yet. Let's just put our error value in here. I changed the wiring for this, but it's still throwing the error for the wideband. So we're showing rich here, but lean here. So we're just gonna have to manually kind coordinates of where you want to be idling at, and just get it all set up for when you switch it. So then we have this much error, and then our idle target's going to correct for that. So we're going to go ahead and turn down the idle real quick, and then we can get our base timing set. Alright, so our idle's kind of stuck high right now. I don't know if the idle valve is stuck at the moment, but we're not really worried about it. For setting up your base timing, you come into your triggers and calibrate, click this. You can set it to whatever degree you want as long as you know what you're looking for. In this case, we're going for the 10. So you'll get out, make sure your timing light's hooked up. The harnesses usually have a little lead on the back for your coil wire, and then you will come in and look for your mark. So we're about 10 degrees off right now. Then you're going to come back and offset it by another 10 degrees from where you are. The idle drops, so that means it retarded another 10 degrees. And if we look down here, still about 4 or 5 degrees off. We'll come back in here again and just change it. We'll go by another 5. And it's just a repeat process type of thing. And now we're about dead on the money. So then I have to put the camera down for this, but you want to check that it's not drifting with your revs, so you'll rev it and make sure it stays in the same spot, or if you have to change your ignition offset delay. So we have no movement, so we are good setting our timing. And then you basically just come back in here, you click done, and then you want to save it, and then you see our idle drop too because we're not as advanced in our timing. So we're holding about 1200 RPM right now, which is all right. And then we can get the buttoning up everything and get into tuning. Got our wideband working now, and everything's revving pretty decent. Temps are holding, temps matching there and here. So we know that we're getting a good reading on everything. And yeah, just have to finish up with tuning it. Need to wait for maybe Joe or Stevie to get here and have them drive it while I tune it, and then we'll be back in the business. Alright, so back in the garage. A couple weeks later, I went to pick up Stevie to tune the car the last time and developed a misfire. So I figured out it was the coil pack harness. So now we have a new PRP kit here for a R35 coil kit install. So this will just bolt on, switch our dwell settings over for the new coils, and should be good to go. So we'll do that install for you guys and get back into it. Get your trusty impact in there and get all your coils out. Put your bolts in a safe spot. Unplug your old harness. And all these just pull out. There's a ground on the back. So we'll get that off and then start putting the rest in. Also down here we have our igniter, and then our igniter needs to be bypassed for these. So you just want to unplug this. Then you have one side that goes into one end and one side into the other. Helps if you plug it in the correct side. And it just looks like that. Alright, so first you want to get each of your O-rings in the bottom side of the bracket, so that way your coils seal and no other oil or water gets in. Pretty simple. So you can do that and then get to mounting the bracket. Just want to make sure they're not pinched or nothing. Comes with lube. You can use it if you want, but for this is not too detrimental. So they're all good. You take it, arrow to the back on this, drop it in there, and you'll take your long bolt. There is a countersink on the bracket here, but the bolt's a little long for it, so you need to stack the washers so it seats. One little click and you're all good. So then we can start putting our coils on. So the boots are trimmed to fit. So if you look here, had to trim about 4 notches compared to the other one. Each SR is a little different, so you just need to measure it to fit to where it kind of seats, and then that spring will go around the spark plug and that's how it fires. So I'm gonna get these all trimmed up and then we can start putting these in. Camera died, so you want to plug in your harness to all the coils before you mount them, or else the plugs don't really fit because it gets right up against the valve cover. The cylinder 1 coil you have to modify and just chop off the end. So we'll get this plugged in, but it also doesn't use a bolt. So how does it mount? They give you this little bracket and you just kind of got to slide it on there. When you push everything down, it just kind of seats on the flats in there. There's a little notch, so I'll get that on there. So as you can see, it's mounted, not going anywhere. There's 2 little tabs here and here. It's kind of hard to see. You need 2 hands to do it. That's plugged in, this is plugged in, ground is set up, and igniter. So then all you need to do is adjust your dwell times in the ECU, and then you can start it. You don't want to start it before switching that, or you can easily mount the coil. Alright, so we're in the car. Key on and get connected to your Link or whatever standalone you have. And then we want to change our ignition dwell. So in this case, I do a lot of these cars that have this already. So I have a file just set up for our coil dwell, and then you want to store it. And have an IAT error sitting, so we can correct that and get into starting the car. So then you want to come into your analog inputs and your IAT and just see what its current value is at. This should be all correct, but it might just be going above the high value, so we can just set this to a higher error so that it doesn't trigger. In case it reaches a temp that goes into that voltage range. And now if we clear it, no more check engine light, and we can get into starting the car. Just had a wire loose for the igniter bypass, and now we can just get this fired up. Fires right up, and now we're running. Just have to wait for our AFRs to kick in, but as far as throttle response, everything seems good. So as long as it gets up to temp and we don't have the same issue, then that should be it. But we were moving the coil harness and it was kind of kicking back in from the random misfire. So we hope that's it. If not, it could be these injectors. We're not really sure what's on it because it came with the car and the other ECU. But so far it seems to be running okay, and if everything checks out, then we can get into tuning it. But otherwise, the old harness is a mess. The A2 is pretty bad, but it's just kind of seem rigged together. But otherwise, idle super stable, rev's fine, so shouldn't be a problem. 100. Our boost gauge isn't really working, but our first pull we actually hit a map limit, although it was still rich, but now we can start getting into it. So there's a lot better possibly hit a map limit again, so we can check over our wastegate line and make sure if it popped off. But now our boost gauge is actually reading. It wigs out sometimes, but yeah, so we're hitting boost limit. It's going to around 21 psi now. As before, it was kind of running around 17, 18. So have to go back and check that out. But otherwise, it's running pretty good up to when it hits our limit. All right, so back in it next day. Nothing was wrong with the wastegate lines, but I'm guessing the previous owner had not set the base timing correctly on the previous standalone. So now with our current ignition map, too much retard will build boost a lot easier, and I think that's what our issue is running into. So we're gonna switch that up and then get back into it and finally get this thing tuned. All right, got our map just flashed back on with the new ignition map settings. So get this fired up and warmed up, and then we can get to driving. Alright, back to leaving the house. Still a little bit of snow out by the border of Mexico, but we should be out there soon to get some poles in. Alright, finally get some poles in. Let's get some decent data. Still hitting boost cut, unfortunately. So we can try to put a little bit more timing into it, make sure it's not that. Otherwise, it just might be the wastegate. Don't think we're going to run into any knock with this setup being a Forge SR, but still have to look out for it. Alright, put a little bit more timing back in, probably put a little bit of fueling on spool up, so give it another shot. See if it's still over. Yeah, still hitting around 21 psi. Might have an issue with the wastegate. Has a 3071 on it, but I think it's a cheaper China replica, so that finally might have just went on its way out. So I might have to look into getting a different wastegate or just turbo setup entirely. Just cruising back around. Drivability is great and everything. It's just the whole overboost thing. No issues with any like shifting or try to shift without the clutch here. Drive with my speed. Everything drives great. So mainly just a wastegate issue at this point. Time to upgrade anyways for the new season. Get something a little better. Because the Chinese 3071 just, it ain't it. I'm pretty sure it's been burning oil for a little bit too. I saw it, some oil in the intercooler piping before, so it's not really worth trying to just throw an external gate on the manifold and make them do with it, because it's just overall not a great turbo to begin with.